Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for attending and watching another episode of FutureProof You's podcast, F Yourself. Today, we are going to be featuring our upcoming classes around Job Search Masterclass. And this week, we are talking about networking at scale with content. As always, I'm joined by my colleagues, John Lovig and
Hello.
Aaron McKelkey.
Thank you, Dan.
And today, we really want to talk about how networking at scale with content really means using content to further your job prospects, your job career search. And of course, everyone looks at LinkedIn as pretty much the main venue for using content to create a personal brand. And there's 4 ways that we've really featured in our classes I want to tell you about that you can use 4 kinds of content, 4 different types of content that you can use today very quickly on LinkedIn. So the first is commenting. First is commenting on other people's posts. The great thing about commenting on other people's posts is that you get visibility to their network, not just your own network. So if you comment on somebody with 1 million followers, you just got in front of 1 million people. Like, how cool is that? It's so easy to do, right? And one other comment that I find slightly ineffective, and John, you've seen this too, is when somebody announces they've got a new job, right? It's people will smash the button, right? And you've seen that.
Or comment with the pre-filling response that LinkedIn gives you, which just means, I just did Smash
That's
Plus.
right, Smash Plus, right. So instead of just liking or thumbs up, it's congratulations on the new job or congrats, buddy. That's a little bit lazy, right? Ultimately, right, John? So,
yes.
And then the next one is sharing content. So taking somebody's content and then sharing it to your network. Now, if you don't put any of your own comments on it, right, your own take on it, that's also kind of lazy. Right, John?
Yeah, and I also just don't think it performs as well. I think when you just simply reshare, it doesn't get the same type of engagement that it does when you put actual content of your own. If I'm not mistaken, I think LinkedIn doesn't prioritize that.
That's a great point. Absolutely great point. And it's a little bit lazy, right? And so if you share somebody's content, this brings us to the third kind of content. It's really great if you put your own take on it, because ultimately your audience wants to hear from you, right? They want to hear what you have to say on whatever topic it is. Maybe it's your industry, maybe it's job search, whatever it is. It's really effective, I think, for people to hear your voice.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying this conversation with Dan, John, and I about creating content and future-proofing your career, make sure you guys check out our website, futureproof-you.com. There's a link in the description below. We do live classes. We do career coaching. We have a bunch of articles on our blog. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel on whatever platform you're listening or watching, we'd appreciate it if you could do that so we can bring you guys more value. If you're listening on a podcast platform, we'd love a 5-star review.
And of course, the last type is to create original. And so we've actually had this debate, Aaron and I, right, and John too, right? We've had this debate on how do you create original content? Do we write it from scratch, or do we use AI, right? And we've had a lot of discussions around where you can start, where you can finish. Aaron, I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, I think a lot of people abuse AI with that, and they just spam things that are not authentically them, which is a great way to not effectively network at scale with your content because you blend in with the masses.
Yeah, and so we've actually talked about the concept of first mile, right? So creating some content, but using AI to just at least give you a little jumping off point, right? To get your content down.
Yeah. And one of the things people get wrong, it's exactly the same way students initially use AI. Replace me, do it for me, copy paste. And people think with content creation, Hey, ChatGPT, write me a LinkedIn article about content marketing. Copy, paste, done. And there are so many other more effective ways and more authentic ways. So we mentioned last mile. You give it a broad concept, it gives you an output, you tweak it, kind of like the self-driving semi that it might navigate on the interstate, and then the last mile from the off-ramp to the grocery store, what's getting unloaded, the human drives it. That's where the analogy comes from. Here's one that I use all the time. I made a content idea generator. It doesn't write anything for me. It takes a topic and gives me 100 different ways I could package that idea. Then I write it authentically myself, and it just helps with the ideation process instead of the write it for me process.
Terrific examples, and these are such easy things that people can do, right? And increase their networking and really networking at scale is what we're talking about today. But we've also talked about, and we've taught this too, the idea that networking obviously is just one venue, right? And John, I'd love to hear your kind of take around going into multiple places at the same time.
Yeah, and certainly LinkedIn is a great place to get yourself in front of employers and recruiters and just other people you want to network with. But it's if you have multiple channels that you communicate across, especially if they're more professional versions of yourself. But even so, again, authenticity means a lot. If you're not posting anything too horrible on some of your other channels, it's okay to kind of blend your personal life with your professional life. I think a big misconception is that you shouldn't post the same thing across different channels, but how many people have the same Twitter followers as they do LinkedIn followers?
Right. That Venn diagram,
very
that
few.
Venn diagram is probably very.
And then you're assuming that they're seeing that piece of content on both. So why not also use Twitter? And I think certainly change it up for the format so it's more digestible, maybe link to something broader. But if you can start to understand where you get traction in different areas, use those to their advantage and try and post something pretty relevant. I think it makes it easier to just repurpose content across different channels so that you don't have to rework the wheel every time.
And so from a recruiter perspective, right? And you see somebody that, and you've actually recruited for many different types of creative roles, right? So product, digital, whatever. From a recruiter perspective, what does that mean to you when you see somebody that's effective, or maybe they're at least a little bit more prominent on working their content, kind of schedule?
Well, I mean, imagine I've placed social media people, marketers. Imagine a marketer with lackluster content.
Right.
What are you doing? Like, you're not even using your own marketing brain to market yourself. You know branding and personal, brands, but you're not applying it to your own personal brand. That's such a waste of brain power. And you could do it much easier than other people because you do it every day. Now, granted, maybe that's the same as me being like, oh, well, I should be able to rewrite my resume really fast, right? I'm great at critiquing other people's resume, but when I have to critique my own, I'm too in my own head. I have to make someone like you, Dan, do it so that I don't, do the same thing over and over again.
And so, what's the effectiveness, right, of somebody that wants to use content, right, in creating their personal brand, and is pinning or featuring content at the top of your profile, is that important?
I think it's certainly important and a useful tool. This is where you can curate your content to reflect the most important things that you want to articulate about your personal brand. So, featuring those important things are, I think, a better way to quickly draw someone into content that you want to point them to. Especially, again, we talked about this in our last course. LinkedIn, the power of LinkedIn over a resume is its social proof.
Right.
And so your content is a way of showing people how you write, how you think, what value you might be able to add. And if you're not highlighting that on a regular basis, then you're not really helping your personal brand much.
And I want to add one that it speaks to today. It shows that you're human.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The authenticity comes out. right? And Aaron, I mean, you've done such an effective job, an incredible job in creating massive scale using your content, and really just, I mean, tell us about your transformation, right, over the past, let's say, year and a half, using content.
Make him
And
sound like a butterfly.
It really is.
yeah,
Transformation,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I mean,
my metamorphosis.
yeah.
Here I come out of my cocoon.
I, students told me this all the time. You were the guy that told us how bad social media was and how we're wasting our time on TikTok, and now you're on my For You page every day. What are you doing? I've I've had multiple students tell me that. The short version is my wife in March of 2024 said, "You need to start posting stuff." I didn't even look at things. I thought LinkedIn, I put a profile down, it was F minus bad, and it's like, that'll get me a job or whatever. I didn't post anything. And my wife told me I needed to start doing it. And like most things in my life experience, when I listen to my wife, good things happen. And when I don't, bad things happen. And my 7th TikTok of all time got millions of views. People were texting me, "Your video has 1 million views." And I was so bad at social media. I said, "Is that good or bad?" I didn't know because I didn't watch TikTok. I didn't scroll them and have a feel for that. And ever since then, I've expanded out, like John talked about, put it out on other platforms. And TikTok, especially in 2024, was up in the air. So I really had to cross post and repackage content to go into different channels. And LinkedIn has been one for about 6 months that I've focused on. Started really slow, but has spiked. And in about 6 or 7 months of posting regularly to LinkedIn, I crossed 1 million impressions, which
Yeah.
for someone who had an F minus blank profile a year ago, I think is pretty good. And the big debate is this, and you guys can weigh in here: is the volume a surface area for luck? If I post 100 videos, the chance that one of them gets a lot of views, is that just a scale math game, or am I sharpening the sword every time I post, look at analytics, and refine the craft because I'm actually getting reps?
It's kind of a balance of
Both.
both, right?
Yeah.
There's, you mentioned how your videos on LinkedIn perform so much, especially the short form content videos perform so much better than your other content. Reason being, a lot of people aren't doing that. And the algorithm is prioritizing that, and even has a special section to feature it. So when you're doing something like that, the volume is just going to ensure that you're very recognizable. And there are people in different fields that there are people, if I guarantee you, I can go to almost any recruiter and say their name and they will know that person because they are so widespread on LinkedIn. And I even, my friend the other day was commenting on a post by someone who is a recruiter who he keeps seeing them and he's not even connected to them. I am. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been seeing her content for a year and a half. And it's just, it expands your chance of getting reach.
Yeah. Yeah. The algorithms, are actually there to help you if you know how to use them. Right. And so, but you have to still do your testing, still do your kind of A/B testing on the types of content, right? And Aaron, you're really good at multiple formats, um, written versus audio versus video, right? Is it memes? Is it just an image, right? And Aaron, your video content, I mean, it's so impressive what you've done, with that.
Yeah, I don't do memes hardly ever. And there are a lot of people who say you should for sense of humor reasons and connecting with your audience. I just see a lot of low effort memes and it
Yeah.
turns me off. They also seem to burn fast and hot, but then fizzle out. And if you're one of those people, I work with teenagers, so they call it dragging the meme. And dragging the meme is cringe. Translation for the Gen X
That's
listeners:
me.
it's better to not do the trend than be late on the trend.
Oh, look at that. All right.
Yeah, but to me, it's just this. If you realize the power of this. If we look at it from the algorithm John mentioned, it's just in your favor to post because so few people do, and so many people scroll and search and watch.
Yeah.
That right there is a reason.
Lots of lurkers.
Yeah.
Yes, but and LinkedIn is the lurkiest. That's not a real word, but it has the lowest percent of people who contribute, which means those who do, like us, see great results because most people are just scrolling, doom scrolling, and not posting. But I think if you can do it in a way that is documenting what you already do, and you get in the habit of just, here's something I learned today, here's something cool I discovered, here's a misconception I've had 3 clients bring to me, I feel compelled to share that to the world. I mean, my first video on LinkedIn that got in the tens of thousands of views was people kept asking me new features of iPhone, and I'm that guy. So I was like, I'll just make a video about the new RCS texting. It was stupid simple, just about iPhones, and I thought, oh, it's LinkedIn. I'm the AI guy. Does that really fit? The next day or two, I look back, 90,000 views from that video, and it just got spun up in the algorithm. And every time that I've seen a spike, it's been from a video. But I think the consistency and just doing it in authentic ways is a superpower compared to most of your competition.
Yeah. Right. Well, what were some of the stats that you've seen as far as percentage of LinkedIn users actually posting content?
Yeah, according to LinkedIn itself in 2024, they said 97% of the platform's user base does not regularly post content. 3% does.
We are in that 3%. That's, I mean, right. And
Yeah.
so 3%. And then how many do you think, actually post video?
A percent of that percent. And in the fall of 2024, if you're on mobile, LinkedIn added the video tab view like TikTok, where you can just scroll.
Yeah, right.
And so, that might be more of a Gen Z younger LinkedIn audience, but it's a whole new content channel that they're pushing, and they're going to promote video when they're adding a new view like that.
Yeah.
Well,
let's face it, at the end of the day, LinkedIn makes its money off of advertisement just as much, if probably not even more, than their LinkedIn recruiter licenses.
Oh, it has to be, right? I mean, how many users are on LinkedIn, right? Probably 100 million, 200 million.
I think more than that. But still, it's still a relatively small percentage of users compared to other social media platforms.
Right? It's definitely more targeted, right? And towards one part of your life, right? Instead of your, let's say your completely personal brand instead of your professional personal brand, right? So,
and it also tends to be white collar workers, people who work for larger companies, not necessarily, but white collar in particular.
Yeah. All right.
Here's one that I want you guys to answer this. I get asked all the time. I've never posted anything. How do I start? What's my first piece of content going to be? What encouragement or advice would you give to somebody in that situation?
Anything that interests you that you think you could get engagement from and can keep engaging with people, right? If there's something you want to post something that interests you, because if somebody makes a comment on it, you want to continue the conversation in that thread. Those things where you get that engagement, that stuff keeps showing up in people's feeds. That's what gets pushed. If you don't get engagement on your content, nothing happens. It just lingers. So anything that you feel like you could have an opinion on, a subject matter that you find engaging, do it. And then, and of course, I think the other thing is anything that might future-proof yourself, right? Like a future-oriented post that shows shows what you're looking for in a way. We're getting into AI more. I'm recruiting a lot for AI, so I'm posting more about AI so that I show up in those circles.
Yeah. I mean, where you want to go, right? And of course, you want to talk about what you're doing today, but where you want to go, I think, is a much more interesting prospect for the reader, right? The watcher, right? Where you've been, I think, can be effective, right? Things you've done in the past can be effective if you.
Well, you don't want to
ignore it, but I think that kind of content can be effective if you put it in the context of today, right? Say, oh, I had this experience, a year ago, and wow, it reminds me of something that I just ran across today, and it actually applies to where I want to go. I mean, you're kind of hitting kind of the whole spectrum with a piece of content like that. Um,
Yeah.
I think even just sectioning off one day, right? Let's say it's Friday, right? Because Friday's kind of like a more casual day, right? In work circles, I think if you have a casual Friday where you're not so buttoned up, and it's like that's where your personality can really come out, and make that your day of personality. I've seen some content creators have Monday being one topic, Tuesday being something completely different, right? Wednesday going back to the first topic, right? And you're creating a schedule like that. So then that as an audience or a watcher of somebody, that potentially, if you want to remember that Monday is that topic and and you have interest, then you're really playing to your audience, right? Then you're really playing
Yeah. Like
to, what their schedule is, right? Because it's not about you, it's about your
I was
audience.
I was coaching somebody who's trying to make a transition into project
Mm.
management, right? And I think you're both familiar with this person. They wanted to know, what's a good post? I said, you know what gets a lot of traction? Polls.
Yeah.
And since you're not a project manager, but you want to be, why don't you ask what the best project management certification is in the market today,
Perfect.
or the best value that you get? And then when you get responses from people, the people that you see who responds, it's going to be more than your first degree connections. Now connect with those people and say, thanks so much for
Right.
participating in the poll. I've been trying to figure out where I should direct myself. It becomes a natural talking point that warms up a conversation so that you have people coming to you. And yet at the same time, you're not selling
Yeah.
something. You're starting a dialogue with a new professional
Right.
contact.
And then connect to them, right? And then you've just been able to connect to their network, right? Because it's all about the second iteration, the second circle
Mm-hmm.
of connections. And then when you comment back to them, let's say it's just your post, you're replying to their comment, their engagement with your post. You just got in front of all their whole network, right? So
Mm-hmm.
connecting also with your commenters is a good idea, right? Because then their audience sees you.
And then what you can do is repost your poll,
Okay.
thank people by tagging them and say, here's what I did with this information. This was the highest option. I went out and got it. Here's my new certificate. Instead of just doing a post saying, hey, everybody, I have a new skill
Yeah.
or certificate
Oh,
on
that's right.
LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Thanking your commenters, so effective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, I mean,
Yeah. And I think the biggest one, people have to turn on their creator brain. Entrepreneurs say this too. Like the first time you make $1 on your own, it sparks something in your brain and you just change how you view the
yeah.
world. The same is true with content. If you hang out with Dan Yu for more than 5 minutes on a Zoom, you'll hear him exclaim, we just made content. Somebody record that or post that. And it sounds so dumb, but walking into work can be a selfie video opportunity for content, or a win after a meeting and you get off a Zoom and go, I should 30-second retell this awesome win that I had for a client. There's your content. It's there. You just have to turn on your content brain and start capturing it.
Yeah. I remember making a video the day after Jimmy Buffett died. And I started thinking, I was walking my dog and I was listening to a playlist of Jimmy Buffett songs, and A Pirate Looks at 40, that song came on, and I started listening to it, and I realized it was about job search and pivoting and networking. And I thought, there's no way. And so I made a video right then as I'm walking my dog. I'm like, I'm covered in sweat, but I got a ton of engagement, right? And and I posted it that day because it was the day after he died. So, um,
Well, let's face it, if you're comfortable with video, it is the easiest to
right,
do from a capturing perspective, as long as you have a good train of thought going into the conversation.
yeah,
So, like, why not do it? I say this as someone who doesn't post video often because get really uncomfortable with it. But obviously, we post videos of us doing this stuff all the time. So guess I got to get more comfortable.
I post enough for everybody in the
That is
room,
true.
so you're okay.
That is true.
Yeah, and I think all the platforms are becoming more TikTokified, and that is short form vertical video on X, on LinkedIn, YouTube Shorts, you name it. That's what's going to grow, and it has the lowest barrier to entry because if you have a phone and a camera roll app, that is all you need to make a 30-second video.
Yeah. Well, I also would like to let the audience know about our merch, that we are starting to build a portfolio of merch. We've got our little vests today. Though I'm on the mirrored camera. John, you've got the new logo, right? That's our mascot there.
Our buddy
Future Fox, right? And Aaron and I have got the original version of the FU, the original logo. But we will have merch coming out soon.
I think these are just variations.
That is true.
So
that is true. But we're doing our testing. If our audience would like to weigh in on which vest do you like best, let us know. Right? Hey, look at this! I just made a poll. Look at that.
At least for those that have video
That's true.
versions of
That's
the
true.
podcast. For those who don't, we'll take a
That's
screenshot.
Right. So thank you so much to our audience for watching and listening to our podcast, FutureProof You's F Yourself. This has been another episode. Until next time. But thank you so much.
We appreciate you sticking around for the full episode of FutureProof You's Networking at Scale with Content. If it's February of 2025, make sure you check the link in the description below. We're teaching a live class on Friday, February 21st. If you missed that and you're hearing this after the fact, it'll still be on our website as a digital download, and we have lots of other live classes and coaching opportunities for you to future-proof your career at futureproof-you.com. Thanks again for listening.